Once upon a time, 4 college-age girls were stuck in a rut, seeing the same people and places every day with no real sense of autonomy. They had big dreams of self-discovery, of freedom, of letting loose and showing the world their wild side. They soon venture out into a magical land, having interactions with strange new people, occasionally finding themselves in dangerous situations. These girls are powerful and dangerous, and they want the world to see them this way. And through their magical journey, they're able to harness newfound powers of confidence and maturity through becoming culture vultures.
Open your mouth, looking out for all the police.
The experience of girlhood in America is so inherently linked to the idea of fairy tales, with classic narratives like Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and The Little Mermaid being transformative tales of girls maturing through experiences in seemingly magical spaces. I was 16 and currently going through my own process of maturing and going off into the world when Harmony Korine released his 5th feature-length film, Spring Breakers. Spring Breakers, in a lot of ways, was released at the perfect time, coming at the tail end of indie sleaze, recession pop, and celebrity tabloid eras, embodying this messy anything-goes party attitude of the time, but also really embodied the beginning of the social media era, as well as the new era of child stars gone bad like Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez, Miley Cyrus, and Ariana Grande. Every time I watch the film, I'm just so in awe of how timeless it seems, and how much the themes and narrative of the film have maintained relevancy over the years. I'm certainly not the first person to make the connection between Spring Breakers and Fairytales. Enjoyers of the film have praised it for embodying just like this dreamlike sense of chaos, a fantasy of having fun with no consequences. But many others have critiqued the film for just being extremely vapid, overindulgent, misogynistic, and racist. It is, at the end of the day, a film about 4 bikini-clad, white, and mixed white women influenced by hip-hop culture killing a gang of black men. Its content, especially its portrayal of race, is undeniably shocking and offensive. But while so blatantly problematic and reductive, there's something so poignant about the way these issues are spoken about within the film. In a lot of ways, the film seems to perfectly mimic a lot of pop culture trends we've seen in the last few years. Over the past few decades, we've seen countless white and non-black ex-child stars use aesthetics of blackness in order to transform their little girl image into a powerful bad girl image. And this in turn has certainly impacted larger understandings of girlhood in North America. The fairy tale of Spring Breakers is so interesting to me because in a lot of ways it's the perfect reflection of popular North American girlhood narratives. It's a story about tourism, a parable about child star rebellion, a critique of parasitic cultural appropriation. So in this video today, we're going to take the time to break down some of these ideas in order to explore how narratives of white girlhood and ex-child stars often rely on the consumption of blackness to signify maturity, freedom, and rebellion. And through this, I hope to be able to provide some useful critical thinking skills and further discuss how in the future we might break these cycles. What can we learn from a fairy tale narrative like Spring Breakers? And if this sounds like something that would interest you, and I certainly hope it does, stick around after this ad break to hear more about this magical, problematic journey through Florida. Well, I like to think that I'm pretty savvy when it comes to connecting pop culture topics to more academic theories and weaving them together into engaging narratives. I'm definitely no expert when it comes to online safety. Case in point, I was Googling myself the other day, as one does, and I found my email listed on a bunch of really shady data broker websites, which honestly just left me feeling super violated. These data broker websites collect and sell your data without your consent, and they're making billions of dollars doing so, leaving you both vulnerable and with just an overwhelming number of spam calls and emails. Even though these companies legally are supposed to delete your information if you ask, they're really sneaky about it and make the process as confusing and difficult as possible. And that's why I choose to use today's sponsor, Aura, a digital security service that removes your information from these harmful sites and keeps it off. And beyond just scrubbing your data from these websites, Aura is also an all-in-one security tool with a built-in VPN, password manager, antivirus protection, dark web monitoring, fraud alerts, $5 million in identity theft insurance, plus 24/7 access to US-based experts, all in one handy app. As someone who's already prone to feeling pretty overwhelmed, Aura is such a blessing because it allows me to go through my day without, the additional stress of having my information stolen and sold online. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and neither should you. And if you'd like to try out Aura for free, you can go to the link in my description, aura.com/Emma Chang-Kredl, for a free 14-day trial. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to my room. Before we get into things, I just wanted to say, hi, my name is Emma Chang-Kredl. Welcome back to my channel. It's so lovely to have you here. I just wanted to say, as always, thank you so much for your support on my channel. It's meant so much to me. If you want to help my channel grow, you can hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. You can share this video, like it, leave a comment, check out my Patreon. But yes, let's get back to Spring Breakers and the fairy tale of the culture vulture. While storytelling and folklore have been around pretty much forever in every single culture, in an American context, when we think about fairy tales, we usually think about 17th to 19th century European fairy tales, such as Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel. And while the narrative of fairy tales are obviously quite varied, they usually fit into a pretty similar format. There's an inherently good, innocent, and usually young protagonist who engages with a variety of magical entities and spaces, faces an antagonist, overcomes and defeats said antagonist, and is rewarded for their virtues of kindness, generosity, and patience, allowing them to come out the other side a little more mature and womanlike, learning important life lessons. A narrative puberty, if you will. In Goldilocks and the Three Bears, a young girl, Goldilocks, runs away from home and finds herself in an empty house, with 3 bowls of porridge, 3 chairs, and 3 beds. Hungry, she decides to dig into the bowls of porridge. The first bowl is too hot, the second is too cold, and the third is just right. She falls asleep in the bed, and a family of bears, the owners of the house, enter and find their food eaten and the youngest bear's bed being slept in. Goldilocks wakes up frightened and runs out of the house. Even through her short journey in the bear's house, Goldilocks learns the importance of, firstly, figuring out your own comfort levels through her experimentation with the beds and the food. But more importantly, she learns the importance of respecting other people's space and boundaries. This is, after all, the bear's house. Now, if you've never seen Spring Breakers or haven't seen it in a while, it might be kind of difficult to see how this film would fit into a fairy tale-like structure. But when you actually go ahead and lay out the narrative, it's really not too hard to see how I came to this conclusion. In the film, we follow 4 college-age girls on the brink of womanhood who travel to the seemingly magical land of Florida to take part in the tradition of spring break. Here, they come into contact with local creatures such as Alien, a white rapper/gangster, and the embodiment of cultural appropriation. After one girl gets cold feet and returns back home, the 3 remaining girls engage in the local culture, finding a sense of autonomy before meeting an enemy, Archie, a local black gangster and rival of Alien. An encounter with Archie goes awry, and one of the girls is shot in the arm, leading her to return home. Alien and the remaining girls must defeat Archie in order to avenge their friend and come out on top. The girls, in a really ridiculous scene, gun down Archie and his entire gang and come out free on the other side, more grown up and experienced than they were at the beginning of the film. Much like Goldilocks, the girls of Spring Breakers are in a period of growth and experimentation.
We're not going to be miserable. We're getting out of here.
One of the film's biggest selling points was obviously the casting of ex-child stars Selena Gomez, Ashley Benson, and Vanessa Hudgens. And this casting decision was certainly no coincidence.
In some ways, this is like a Disney film.
With more guns and crack.
In speaking about girlhood, it's hard to avoid the discussion of ex-child narratives. Young girls who are thrust into the spotlight at a very young age and are put into boxes of girlishness, who seek to emerge from these constraints as mature, free women. These ex-child stars have oftentimes also faced a lot of abuse and control at the hands of the entertainment industry or perhaps their parents. For example, Vanessa Hudgens came under fire at Disney after photos of her wearing lingerie were leaked, threatening threatening the squeaky clean child star image she had been curated through projects like the High School Musical trilogy. This led her to seek out more mature roles, like the one she took in Zack Snyder's flop of a film, Sucker Punch. Similarly, Selena Gomez's mother, who is surprisingly a huge fan of Harmony Korine, insisted that her daughter take part in this project to kind of mature her image a bit. And like Goldilocks, trying out these different porridges and beds, finding some too hot, too cold, too soft, or too hard. Sometimes the process of ex-child star adultification can be a bit awkward. Take JoJo Siwa's attempt to mature her image a bit with her song Karma, which was just absolutely ridiculed by the public for its awkward try-hard nature. Similarly, ex-Hannah Montana star Miley Cyrus had a bit of an awkward transition into her more adult image, with scandals like her using a pole in one of her performances of Party in the USA being just a little bit too hot for the masses, or her classic "Take Me Seriously, I'm Grown Up Now" anthem Can't Be Tamed, which was just a little bit too cold. And while these examples were definitely departures from the usual way we saw these child stars, they were still marked by a clear feeling of girlishness. Like I said before, this puberty feeling. And this search for purpose and identity can also be seen really clearly in Spring Breakers, which opens with our 4 titular characters in and around their college, seemingly stuck in a rut of boredom.
Everybody's miserable here because everybody sees the same things. They wake up in the same bed, the same houses.
They crave the freedom to go wild, to have more autonomy, to be taken more seriously.
We're leaving, you guys. We're not going to be stuck here.
To not be so boxed in, like the ex-child stars who portrayed these characters. And much like Goldilocks, these girls are able to grow and find themselves through consuming things that aren't theirs. In a lot of ways, Black culture is to Spring Breakers what the just right porridge is to Goldilocks. The perfect amount of sexiness and edginess that allows them to, in the eyes of the public, transform from sheltered little girls into bad girls with agency. The girls of Spring Breakers are so overtly influenced by Black culture, in a lot of ways using it as kind of a mental escape from the boredom of their day-to-day lives. But that being said, their understanding of Black culture is very reductive and limited to seeing money and guns as signifiers of Black culture, and further signifiers of freedom. Their rooms are covered in hip-hop posters. They drink alcohol out of squirt guns. They use AAVE when trying to sound threatening.
And I was going, yo, get on your goddamn knees.
In the film, blackness is pretty much solely portrayed through pretty stereotypical lenses. Rappers and gangs with a lot of money and guns.
Them dudes is straight off the block, no joke, murderers, killers, baseheads.
Overly sexualized and often silenced Black women, who I won't even be able to show in this video because I'm pretty sure every time they're on screen, they're completely naked. While speaking about the film, rapper Gucci Mane, who portrays Archie in the film, stated, quote, "It's a white movie. I'm the only Black person in the whole movie. It's like a white Pulp Fiction. I'm the bad guy. That's what they wanted me to play. I could have been the good guy if they wanted me to." Harmony Korine has never openly really spoken about his intentions with the racial elements of the film, and I can't really just like walk around in his head and figure out what he was trying to say. While I think that I am really doing, like a good faith reading of the film, Korine's discussion of race in the promotion of the film wasn't the best. For example, he spoke a lot about wanting the girls to feel comfortable on set, seeing them as just like these innocent ex-Disney stars who wanted to branch out in their careers, providing them with this experience.
Like, who do you want to be in the film? I said, well, I would love, blah, blah, blah. And I said, Selena would, just be the dream. And then the next day they were like, she's flying to your living room. I didn't know anything about her personally. And so I just started flipping over all my artwork and stuff because I didn't want to freak her out.
On the other hand, while talking about the Black characters in the film, he mostly just talked about the fact that Gucci Mane was in jail during most of the pre-production.
Gucci is just is a rapper from Atlanta, and is like a hero of mine. And I asked him, he was in prison when I called him and asked him to play this part. He said, yeah, as soon as he gets out, he would love to do it. And I said, don't reoffend.
in many ways just like amplifying this idea that Black culture is inherently intertwined with violent gang culture. That being said, whether or not this portrayal of Blackness is ethical or not, and I don't think it is, the ways in which Blackness is seen through this really reductive lens does kind of make sense, as it is very much in line with the ways in which the girls of Spring Breakers understand the experience of Blackness, a one-dimensional narrative that can be embodied like a movie or a video game.
Pretend like it's a video game. Act like you're in a movie or something.
Knees on the ground.
What they do?
On the ground.
When thinking about fairy tale structures that mimic this narrative, one that came to mind was The Little Mermaid, which follows a young mermaid from a royal family who is obsessed with the culture of the above-ground world. After finding out that humans have immortal souls and are able to go to heaven, as well as falling for a handsome land-dwelling prince, the mermaid visits a sea witch who agrees to transform her fishtail into legs at the price of her beautiful singing voice. And while the narrative of The Little Mermaid has been interpreted through the lens of Blackness, with Black communities having to assimilate to white communities in order to live more prosperous lives and having to silence themselves through this process, when you think about it hard enough, this is kind of narratively similar to this whole culture vulture thing that we've been discussing today. Much like the mermaids, the Spring Breakers are obsessed with a culture that they're not a part of and have only stood from afar. In the Disney adaptation of the story, Ariel admires her collection of land items singing the song Part of Your World, in which she laments about wishing that she lived on the land.
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat?
Look at my shit. This ain't nothing. I got rooms of this shit.
While the girls are clearly influenced by and enjoy their more narrow understanding of Black culture, in one of the film's opening scenes, we can really understand the limit of this appreciation. Here, Candy and Britt sit in class while their professor gives a lecture on the civil rights movement.
After the Civil War, to show that there is a continuum, there is a constant struggle on the part of African Americans in the South to claim their freedom, their liberty.
But Candy and Britt aren't listening. They're passing notes about spring break and drawing dicks. It's almost as though they hear the word freedom and choose to forget all the surrounding context. While making this video, Lani's Lens dropped a really great video about kind of just like the progression of the white culture vulture in pop culture, which is such a great video that you should definitely check out. And it does a really great job of unpacking the historical implications of this kind of culture vulture behavior. But just for the sake of context, I will be rehashing briefly a couple ideas throughout this video. In the 19th century, a new performance trend arose within America. Minstrel shows, in which white performers would put on cartoonish Black makeup and perform caricatures of Black culture for white audiences. And while it's rare to see like this original form of minstrelsy in pop culture now, I would argue that the kind of cultural appropriation that we see in a film like Spring Breakers is very much still of this lineage. Following the release of the rather pubescent Can't Be Tamed, Miley Cyrus entered a new era, sporting a fade, twerking, and talking about being high on perp at the club, wearing Jordans. On June 19th, 2013, a bit over a year after the release of Spring Breakers, Miley released the music video for the lead single off of her new album Bangers titled We Can't Stop. While reminiscent of the themes of Can't Be Tamed, where Miley tells the world that she can't be held back because, you know, she's wild now, We Can't Stop really doubled down on this new era of bad girl maturity, through Miley singing about doing drugs, twerking, and thriving through these actions. Much like Spring Breakers, Miley seemingly used Blackness as a sort of escape from the confinement she faced within the music industry, which branded her as a little girl. And this is because the ways in which we understand girlhood and the idea of maturity in North America is so inherently linked to race. While white girls are often seen as girlish well into their adult years, yearning to be taken more seriously,
I'm not a little girl anymore.
Black girls are often seen as much more adult way earlier on in their lives, being overly sexualized and expected to take on more responsibilities.
Precious, I'm hungry. You plan on putting some food in that frying pan? You're still in junior high school, and you're pregnant with your second child.
They're really not afforded the long-form girlhood of the white woman. This dynamic really works to the advantage of white and non-black ex-child stars. Given society's understanding of black girlhood, embodying blackness would be a logical, albeit extremely unethical, fast track into being taken more seriously, being seen as more dangerous and mature. In Eating the Other, Desire and Resistance, Bell Hooks speaks on the appropriation of black culture by white people, writing, quote, "Masses of young people dissatisfied by U.S. imperialism, unemployment, lack of economic opportunity, afflicted by the postmodern malaise of alienation, no sense of grounding, no redemptive identity, can be manipulated by cultural strategies that offer otherness as appeasement, particularly through commodification," unquote. Much like we get excited by stars like Taylor Swift having new eras through different branding, sounds, and aesthetics, the consumption of the other, specifically here blackness, offers celebrities who feel like they're kind of in a rut the opportunity to rediscover and redefine themselves in a new and exciting way. While rewatching the video for We Can't Stop, one thing that really stood out to me, which I also noticed in Spring Breakers, was the way that blackness and whiteness are very much segregated. While Miley and her white friends are just like having fun throughout the entire video, jumping in pools, dancing around, the black actors and dancers are shown sparingly. Black women are only shown twerking and gassing up Miley while she's twerking. Much like the ways in which Gucci described his character in Spring Breakers, the black people in We Can't Stop are very much used as props to Miley to legitimize her actions and experiences. She's engaging in black culture with black people, but outside of these boundaries, they no longer exist. While discussing her post-Hannah Montana career, Miley stated that, quote, "The concept of Hannah Montana is that when I would alter my image, I would put on a wig, and I would put on sparkly things that held a new value. That was valuable. It did translate into my real life. There was a different level of hysteria, the way that kids would react at these Hannah shows versus when I was myself and I would meet fans. I guess that's kind of why originally when I started doing solo projects as my own identity, I almost created kind of alter egos of myself," unquote. The idea of having alter egos to maintain a sense of relevancy in the celebrity world, especially in the music industry, is something that is now more popular than ever, especially coming off the tail end of Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. And one way that we can extend this idea of pop star eras to the narrative of Spring Breakers is through the idea of tourism, of leaving your space of comfort and venturing out into a foreign territory to gain new experiences and grow as a person.
I think we found ourselves here. We finally got to see some other parts of the world.
The idea of tourism is definitely idealized, seen as an important experience for personal growth. For example, many young people will take a gap year from school in order to travel and expand their horizons or find themselves through various cultural experiences that they wouldn't find back home. Bringing us back to the idea of girlhood fairy tales, which I would argue kind of follow a similar structure to what we would now understand as tourism. Much like Alice from Alice in Wonderland grows up in a lot of ways through her experiences of consumption and seemingly odd experiences in an exotic and magical land, the girls of Spring Breakers are able to gain a sense of confidence and autonomy through their experiences partying, consumption, and engaging with people they normally wouldn't. But while Alice engages with anthropomorphic figures, the girls of Spring Breakers are engaging with black gang members and the white rapper Alien. The distinction between tourists and residents is made very clear, with Alien stating,
"I live at the beach all year round. I'm from here. It's my home. Only bad part is spring break. That's when all the scum come."
Offering to give the girls an authentic experience. He does so by showing them black culture through the lens of whiteness, much like the ways in which tourist companies will weaponize the idea of authenticity when promoting cultural experiences for people from out of town. And this idea of authenticity is so important to our discussion of girlhood and the ex-child star pipeline, because while pop stars are expected to have all these different transformations, all of their eras are expected to come from a place of authenticity. In White, Lauren Michele Jackson discusses Christina Aguilera's stripped era, which produced career-defining hits like Dirty. a stark move away from Christina's traditional sound, which was also arguably defined by Black culture, with her affinity for things like jazz, soul, and blues. Quote, "The entire stripped era adopted scripts and sounds once relegated to niche urban markets, now heard all across America from the mouth of a blue-eyed, blonde girl from the suburbs. Christina wanted out of all the apparatuses keeping an artist like her from letting it out. Her way out was again less than coincidental. Blackness became a shorthand for maturity, autonomy, and freedom." Unquote. Jackson further states that this era was, quote, "an opportunity for a whole new self, a more real self." Unquote. But while white and a lot of non-Black mixed pop stars are able to transition their images and explore new sounds and genres, this sort of branding tourism, if you will, is not a privilege that is afforded to their Black counterparts. Case in point, the criticism that Beyoncé received for her Cowboy Carter project, in which she received so much backlash for trying to branch out into the country genre. Similarly, Normani from Fifth Harmony had a really difficult time finding success in the music industry due to the fact that she was a Black woman working within the pop industry, which was primarily white. The fact of the matter is, celebrities like Christina or Miley or the girls of Spring Breakers are so much more easily able to co-opt images of Blackness because, as we've discussed so many times in this video already, pop culture understandings of Blackness are so often reduced to preconceived notions about what Blackness can be, while whiteness is allowed to be more complex. To create an image based in the caricature of Blackness is a historical and ever-present part of white entertainment. In the Brothers Grimm's telling of Little Red Riding Hood, a young girl is tasked with a journey to her grandmother's house through a forest, in which she comes into contact with an evil anthropomorphic wolf, who eats her grandmother, puts on her clothes, and waits for Red in her grandmother's bed, eating Red. A woodcutter finds the wolf and cuts out the unharmed Red and her grandmother before the two fill the wolf's stomach with heavy stones and he falls down a well. Good defeats evil. Red comes out of the horrific situation a little more mature, learning the lesson that you should never talk to strangers. And while Spring Breakers certainly isn't a traditional fairy tale by any means, we can definitely see a connection here between these two narratives. Magic through the power of overindulgence. We have a youthful, innocent protagonist, and we see Blackness being reduced to a big bad wolf archetype. Throughout history, Black people, especially Black men, have been portrayed through depictions that can be described as animalistic, with caricatures highlighting features that make them appear more animal-like, more menacing and violent. This kind of characterization has been described as the brute caricature, which, according to the Jim Crow Museum website, quote, portrays Black men as innately savage, animalistic, destructive, and criminal, deserving punishment, maybe death. This brute is a fiend, a sociopath, an antisocial menace. Black brutes are depicted as hideous, terrifying predators who target helpless victims, especially white women, unquote. While in Spring Breakers, Blackness is indeed a fairy tale for these white and non-Black characters, when they're in actual proximity to Black people, something shifts. There's a sense of danger present. In Offscreen, Evading Whiteness in Spring Breakers, Ben Llewelyn Taylor describes this shift in tone, writing, quote, "Alien brings the girls to a pool hall, where a majority of the people present are Black. The men in the room surround the girls, but in stark contrast to earlier scenes where mostly white bodies were touching at all times, the Black bodies approach but never touch the white bodies. Faith expresses visceral discomfort. She pulls the other girls aside and complains to them through tears about the unfair situation.
These people are touching us and talking to us, and I don't know them and I don't feel comfortable. I want to go home. This is not what I signed up for."
A sentiment that is very much in line with the history of white victimization at the perceived threat of Blackness. In 1955, a 21-year-old white woman, Caroline Bryant, accused 14-year-old Emmett Till of sexual assault, leading to his brutal torture and murder. I can't really discuss the details right now because this platform is, you know how it is. But if you aren't familiar with the story, I strongly suggest you check it out, even though it is pretty disturbing, as it's just like a super important event in American history. And while this murder was absolutely horrific, it was just one instance of a Black man being accused of assaulting a white woman in a very long history. While this is obviously nowhere near as violent, one of the most iconic images images of white women victimization in contemporary pop culture history is that of Taylor Swift at the 2009 VMAs, after Kanye West hijacked her acceptance speech for Video of the Year, stating,
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
And while undeniably just like a douchey thing to do, Kanye West was absolutely torn to shreds by the public for taking this moment away from America's blonde-haired, blue-eyed sweetheart, becoming in many ways the big bad wolf to Taylor Swift's Little Red Riding Hood. But in 2017, in the wake of some new drama with Taylor Swift and his then-wife Kim Kardashian, Taylor adopted a new look and sound, one that was categorized by a sense of anger, dark colors, snake motifs, and most importantly, a definitively Black-inspired aesthetic. And while we can argue what Kanye and Kim did was, yeah, kind of just like messy and not that appropriate, it's hard to explain away Taylor's decision as a white woman to create an entire era that both victimizes herself and attacks Kanye using Black aesthetics and sounds. There's this seeming sense of comfort in Blackness when it's used to empower the white body, but when faced with real Blackness, there is just this inherent sense of victimhood. Okay, so while editing the video, I realized that I kind of just like make that connection and then move on. I do in fact have a point. It just comes a little later on in the video. So we'll table that and just bear with me for a second.
I know I may be young.
On September 6, 2001, a former child star and teen pop sensation known by the name Britney Spears debuted her new song, I'm a Slave for You, at the MTV Video Awards, wearing a green bikini top, bedazzled short shorts, and a giant white python wrapped around her neck, surrounded by tigers, cages, and dancers in tribal costumes. While the star had already begun to move away from her childlike image with previous hits like Baby One More Time and Oops, I Did It Again, showing off her new, more sexy adult side, this era was undoubtedly still linked to a sense of girlishness, with her sporting schoolgirl uniforms and singing lyrics that, while slightly more provocative, were still quite PG. I'm not that innocent. But there was something different about I'm a Slave for You, which was described as an urban pop hit. Something more dangerous, sexual, exotic. While the song garnered a lot of criticism upon its release, the image of Britney Spears holding a snake while singing I'm a Slave for You is amongst one of the most infamous pop culture moments of the last few decades, and really did help to define Britney's more adult bad girl era. But while this image carries with it a sense of danger, there's also an inherent sense of sterilization and appropriation at play here. In 1901, George T. Winston wrote, quote, "When a knock is heard at the door, a white woman shudders with nameless horror. The black brute is lurking in the dark, a monstrous beast crazed with lust. His ferocity is almost demoniacal. A mad bull or tiger could scarcely be more brutal. A whole community is frenzied with horror, with a blind and furious rage for vengeance," unquote. And knowing the context of this connection, the imagery of Britney escaping a cage and embodying animalistic qualities is powerful, the victimized white woman embodying what she had historically feared. And while of course Britney was a victim of a lot of horrible abuse at the hands of the entertainment industry and her father, it's hard not to connect this imagery to its historical context, repurposing the dangerous mystique of the wild animal and the problematically deemed urban sound as a way to seem more adult-like and autonomous. What Black people are criticized for, Britney was here able to reclaim and use to her advantage.
This one's by a little-known pop singer by the name of Miss Britney Spears, one of the greatest singers of all time, and an angel if there ever was one on this earth.
In a lot of ways, Britney influenced the making of Spring Breakers. From the good girl gone bad narrative, to the use of Britney's music throughout the film, to the casting of former Disney stars.
Loneliness is killing me, and
While the girls in Spring Breakers take part in consistently violent acts, they're still afforded a feeling of girlish innocence, something that we see consistently through the film, notably through the continued use of Britney Spears songs. In arguably the film's most iconic and remembered scene, Brit, Cotty, and Candy take part in a number of armed robberies, while Britney's Every Time plays in the background. A sweet and melancholic ballad about heartbreak and vulnerability, which could be understood as just like another twisted juxtaposition, but I really think points to the grace that a lot of these stars are given through their position of whiteness. They will always be those sweet little girls that you watched on TV when you were a kid. In Spring Breakers, Archie questions aliens taking on the persona of a gangster and, in a sense, stealing business from him, stating,
I taught you everything you know.
Advising Alien to
go back to doing what white boys do, like robbing spring break.
Before Alien states,
sounds to me like someone was getting graded.
The tension with Archie comes to a head when Archie and a gang member open fire at Alien and the girls, leading Cotty to sustain a bullet injury in her arm. In the aftermath of this encounter, Alien and the two remaining girls, Candy and Britt, decide that in order to maintain a sense of justice, they need to murder Archie and his entire gang, putting an end to the culture that Alien and the girls essentially base their entire identities off of. And this concept of simultaneously co-opting Black culture while silencing Black voices of those who speak up against this kind of behavior is arguably another key factor in the ex-child star going through a Black era pipeline. After the release of the nominations for the 2015 VMAs, Nicki Minaj tweeted about her disappointment in her Anaconda video not being nominated for Video of the Year, stating that this was probably because the awards idealized normative skinny body types. And while people who didn't necessarily agree could have, just said nothing, both Taylor Swift and Miley Cyrus, who had released wildly popular, culturally appropriative music videos in the past couple of years, felt the need to be like, Nicki, don't be jealous. Women should always support other women. Which is just like classic 2010s white feminism, but also led to this iconic moment in pop culture history.
And now, back to this bitch that had a lot to say about me the other day in the press. Miley, what's good?
Hey! And while this is obviously nowhere near as violent as something like the murder of Emmett Till, these instances still follow in the same lineage of white victimization and the silencing of Black voices that we've seen so much of throughout history. As Minaj put it in discussing her frustrations with Miley's culture vulture behavior and retorts to her VMA tweets, quote, "Come on, you can't want the good without the bad. If you want to enjoy our culture and our lifestyle, bond with us, dance with us, have fun with us, twerk with us, rap with us, then you should also want to know what affects us, what is bothering us, what we feel is unfair to us. You shouldn't not want to know that," unquote. And of course, Miley reacted with passive aggression.
We all do interviews and we all know how they manipulate shit. Nicki, congratulations.
And later on in 2017, decided to take a step back from her hip-hop era in a statement where she was basically like, I love Kendrick Lamar's Humble because it's, quote, not come sit on my come suck my I can't listen to that anymore. That's what pushed me out of the hip-hop scene a little. It was too much Lamborghini, got a Rolex, got a girl on my and I am so not like that, unquote. The act of cultural appropriation of the likes of the girls of Spring Breakers and of ex-child stars like Miley Cyrus are so linked to a sense of power. Yes, the power of finding oneself and a sense of autonomy, but also through this racial power that we've been talking about. Although in these scenarios, the white woman is taking on the aesthetics of Blackness, she still maintains the positionality of a white woman who has historically been able to leverage her position as a victim of Blackness. Much like the victory over the Big Bad Wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, the end of Spring Breakers revels in the empowerment of Britt and Candy, who have overcome both their desire to become free as well as the threat of Blackness, facing no consequences that we see on screen at least.
We got to let loose.
And through this, their fairy tale journey is complete. They traveled through a magical land, had strange encounters, and overcame the enemy of the other. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Spring Breakers could be read as a film about tourism. And even though the girls dream about the concept of spring break forever, what happens when spring break ends, for good? Before murdering Archie's gang, Britt and Candy call their mothers, promising to make changes in their lives when they return home.
I just feel different for some reason. I feel changed. I just want to be a good girl now.
And while the scene can be read as just like a stark juxtaposition to the actions that will follow, I feel as though this is so telling of the culture vulture behavior within these narratives of girlhood. An experience that helps you to grow and mature, allowing you to come back to your normal everyday life just a little more worldly.
We're different people now. We see things differently. More colors, more love, more understanding.
In recent years, we've been seeing a trend of leaving behind aesthetics of blackness, with a lot of white celebrities returning to more traditional looks. Ariana Grande stopped darkening her skin. Gwen Stefani is an all-American white Republican country girl. Miley is a beachy Malibu hippie. And this idea of white aesthetics as a return home is essential to the narrative of the culture vulture, because this is the pivotal moment in which these girlies stop acting like they ever really cared about Black culture and are able to start feeling, quote, more comfortable in their own skin, showing the fact that the aesthetics of Blackness were, above all else, a tool for these women to further their careers and images. Much like tourists visiting a foreign place and returning home, they can leave behind a mess and walk away basically unscathed. Sure, these celebrities might get called out for being culture vultures, but at the end of the day, they are still massively successful, wealthy stars. So now where does this leave us? Well, I've spent the majority of the video discussing fictionalized narratives and the narratives of major pop stars, as pop culture just, has like a massive influence on the ways in which we understand things like girlhood and race. The tendency to engage in the performance of race is obviously something that goes beyond these spheres into more public spaces. Spring Breakers came out in 2012, a pretty pivotal time culturally, as social media and constant access to the internet became the new norm. And through this popularization of social media, we now have more access to viewing the experiences of others in a whole new way. We can watch people pretty much anywhere in the world going about their day-to-day lives, allowing us this form of almost digital tourism. It's as if we are there with these people doing their day-to-day activities. And through social media furthering the false notion of connectedness, there's a risk in thinking that one might understand cultures more than they do. At the end of Spring Breakers, there's a strange, almost surreal moment where the girls are shown pulling up to Archie's compound in bikinis and ski masks. The black lights of the setting have their neon outfits glowing, but their skin appears a dark blue, as if a digital variation of blackface. Proximity to others via the internet and having more access to different cultures sometimes has the tendency to really take different cultures and reduce them into things like internet speak. For example, so many people use AAVE and understand it simply as internet language due to the popularization and appropriation of things like Black Twitter.
It was a long ass time ago, girl. We've been apart, bro.
They don't know where this language comes from, they just see it online without context everywhere. While Spring Breakers is far from a perfect movie and it's quite problematic in its own way, I believe that it is genuinely important for its honestly authentic and face value portrayal of culture vultures and the inherent violence that stems from these kind of actions, placing this kind of appropriative behavior in the same breath as actual racial violence. And while these appropriative actions may not always seem harmful, they help to maintain these reductive narratives of Blackness and push down voices of Black people at the gain of white voices. If the progression of the fairytale narrative and structure has taught us anything, it's the fact that narratives of white girlhood are skewed to fit into racist, patriarchal structures that seek to patronize young women while demonizing and eroticizing the other. While Spring Breakers, obviously, like we said before, isn't a traditional fairy tale, and it certainly doesn't have like a concrete moral at the end of its narrative, I would argue that the film has the ability to teach us about the dangers of not seeing the historical patterns in this appropriative and violent behavior through the simultaneous use of Black culture and the silencing of Black voices. The examples of fairy tales, films, and ex-child star narratives that we talked about today are not just individual narratives, but instead structural and cultural narratives that have persisted throughout centuries in North America. Minstrelsy isn't dead. It just took on new forms. While Spring Breakers will always be remembered as an iconic art house film with problematic overtones, it also exists as both a historic and contemporary depiction of the intertwinement of culture vulture behavior and pop culture girlhood. While we can root for white pop girlies and be happy for their success, it's important to keep a critical eye out for how they're achieving these goals, who they might be stepping over, who they might be silencing. Because at the end of the day, the authentic image of the bad girl might not always be as authentic as we're led to believe. that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on Spring Breakers. I would love to hear your thoughts on these ex-pop girlies, just anything that comes to mind. I always appreciate reading your comments. If you want to support my channel in any way, again, you can like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, subscribe to my Patreon. But yeah, thank you so much. Love you.